Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to the ABA's bi-weekly What's This Bird live program. My name is Nate Swick, and I've got the sound on somewhere on my computer that I need to turn it off. And it's always Twitter, isn't it? It's always Twitter.
It's always Twitter.
Always Twitter, the noise on Twitter. Anyway, my name is Nate Swick. I do digital communications here for the American Birding Association and I host the ABA American Birding Podcast. I am joined, as per usual, by my colleague Greg Neise, the webmaster of the American Birding Association. And we, Greg and I, and you out there, hopefully, too, to the extent that you are able to do so, are going to talk about birds and bird identification. Greg, how are things on this fine February afternoon?
It is a fine February afternoon here. It is
beautiful
bright
here.
And it's bright and sunny and cold. And we just got about 4 inches of new snow overnight. And it was 50 degrees the day before. And I mean, that's the old adage about Chicago. If you don't like the weather, just hang around for a few minutes.
Yeah, that's a Midwest standard.
And it's supposed to be 50 degrees and raining again on Sunday. So
well, it's beautiful here. We're in the 50s. We're heading into peak pollen season here in the Southeast. Which is also associated with peak pine warbler season. I was hearing pine warblers singing in my neighborhood just the other day. So they're starting to tune up a little bit. Mid-February is peak time for them. I actually went down to Charlotte the other day, earlier this week, and went to see a long-staying, staked-out Bullock's Oriole that had been hanging out in a feeder just north of the city for several months now. I was down there for other reasons, and I figured, hey, why not go and see a bird while I'm at it? And I was sitting there in the stranger's backyard waiting for this Bullock's Oriole to show up. And there were a lot of the classic Southeast feeder birds around, and there are tons of pine warblers, and they were just looking really, really nice, and they were singing quite a bit. It's always the first sign of spring here in the Southeast is when the pine warblers start singing, and mid to late February is the time. So be listening for that bubbly trill if you're in the Southeast like me.
Now, speaking of bubbly trills, I mean, an hour and a half by 7:47 or 7:37 to the northwest. Like I said, we've got fresh snow and cold, and it's all about redpolls and white-winged crossbills here.
Still
in the western Great Lakes. The crossbills are actually the numbers are building in the last week or so.
Or is it all the ones that went down south and are starting to move their way back up north again slowly, or is it a new push of crossbills? I guess we never know with crossbills.
Who knows?
Any guess is as good as the other. Yeah.
Who knows? But they've been showing up in Chicago area cemeteries. I see Steve Huggins here in the Facebook chat.
He's already suggested cemeteries.
Yeah, he says that I gave Carl some intel on possible places to check. Apparently, Carl whiffed. I don't know if that's Carl or lack of birds.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's as I said 100 times, birding is hard.
Birding is easy. Birding is hard. Yep.
We got Katie, Judy, Len, and Chris all saying hi.
Hi, folks.
So hi, folks, and hi, Huggins.
Hello to Tom, Marsa, and Ryan on the YouTube feed. We got some people checking in there as well. Always exciting to see people in multiple places. You can, as usual, you can catch us on all the ABA's social media feeds. We are primarily on Facebook in the What's This Bird group, and also on our YouTube channel. So if you're there and you would like to know about these sort of programs every time they come up every couple of weeks, go ahead and subscribe to us there. And also we're on Twitter. Also, hello to you friends on Twitter. I know there's only a couple of you, but we appreciate you as well. We'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do here today. The ABA manages a Facebook group called What's This Bird. It is one of our many Facebook communities that we have managed over the years. And mainly what that group is a crowdsourced bird identification community. People take photos because everyone has a camera in their pocket now. They take photos of a bird that they can't identify. They post it on the What's This Bird group, and our friendly community of members and admins and all of us fight through the spam to give you the correct identification of that bird that you have taken photo of. And we have a pretty good success rate of identifying those birds. I'd say it's well north of 99%, Greg.
We do, and I would just like to give a shout out to the moderators and admins who battle that spam constantly. I get messages popping up constantly saying that something's been reported, and when I go to delete it, one of the others have already done it. So we have a great group of moderators and admins. I just want to give them a big shout out.
Absolutely. It's a good group. For all of the Facebook's foibles, it's actually been a really successful group, I think, for a lot of reasons. And that goes down to the people that are in it and in this team of admins that we have manning the doors. So what we're going to do, what we see on those sorts of groups is a lot of similar sort of identification challenges over the years. And each time of year, you can usually kind of pick by the birds that people are kind of having issues with. And what we have done is we pulled a few of the photos that people have asked us about in the last couple of days, and we're going to talk through those identifications, talk a little bit about why the birds are what they are and what birders, hopefully across the continent, can expect to see in their own backyards or in their own hotspots or patches or wherever you go birding these days. But right now we're vamping while people arrive. Yeah. So we typically have about 5 or 6 of these, and we'll work our way through, and we'll take about an hour, and then we'll let you go on to your day, and hopefully you'll have a beautiful weekend seeing the birds that we talk about. So you can put this information into action.
A little bit about what the ABA is up to right now. We are at the San Diego Birding Festival, which I hear secondhand. We are not. Obviously, Nate and I.
Yeah. I don't know. We can do this from anywhere, really.
We don't rank high enough to be in San Diego
we
right
aren't
now.
Close enough to San Diego.
Exactly. But we do have ABA staff at the San Diego Birding Festival, leading trips and hanging out and having a good time with everybody there. And I've been kind of watching checklists and things, and it looks like people are having some really good birds. Well, it's hard. It's hard to always really good birding in San Diego County. That's one of the best places to bird on the continent. You have to work hard not to have a good day birding in San Diego County.
That's true. Yeah, beautiful weather, amazing birds. Can't go wrong. But another thing that we'll do is we'll take questions from the people who are paying attention on their social media feeds during their lunch breaks. And so if you have any questions about birds or birding or anything, bird identification, all that stuff, let us know in the comments. We'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll answer those questions the best we can. Yeah, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
So drop them in there. I'm watching Facebook. Nate, I think you're watching YouTube and Twitter.
I got the rest. Yep. We're doing the best we can.
Let's dive into our first picture.
Let's do it. Let's talk birds. Plum Island, Massachusetts. Love Plum Island, Massachusetts. I've had the good fortune to bird there a few times, and it is one of the best winter birding spots on the East Coast, arguably in the ABA area.
So we got a white bird flying over the water.
We have a big white bird. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's big. Maybe it's not.
Maybe it's big. Maybe it's kind of looks
big. Flying over the water, flying over the ocean, it looks like, with those white caps, with those waves. We've got a kind of a largish bird with long pointed wings and a pretty heavy looking bill with a little hook. This is a gull. We love gulls.
Yeah, I don't think
always have issues with
there's
gulls.
Very few people who would look at this and not immediately say gull or seagull if you wish.
Gull.
River gull.
Really, I think it might be is it a bay? There's no bay up there.
But, the first thing that stands out about this bird is it's just basically pure white.
It's white.
But it's not like glaring white, It's kind of
not like ivory.
It's kind of an off-white, exactly.
Kind of a silvery white, but especially there on the tips of the wings. Usually on most gull species, you would expect to see some gray or black up there, and there is none of that.
Precisely. And we also see no markings on the tail. I mean, this is just a... but if we look closely, we can see a little bit of banding.
David Blizzard asks a good question. How do we exclude terns? Also a kind of an oceanic bird.
Okay, well, that's a good question. I think the only tern that we have around in the United States and Canada that would be as bulky as this would be a Caspian tern. All of our other terns are slim, sleek, pointy winged, fast looking. They look more like swallows than they do gulls.
The wings are slender, the tail is long, the bill is very small and sharp. The head is just generally kind of smaller, and usually on most terns this time of year you would expect to see some black marking on the head, rather than just kind of the all white with the dark eye on this bird.
And except for Forster's tern, really, they would all have some dark markings in the wingtips as well. But the other thing here that we're seeing is the bird's bill. The only tern that would come close to looking this shape, this bulky, would be a Caspian, as I said, and that thing's got a huge honking red bill. That's the first thing you would notice about a Caspian tern, is that big red pepper sticking out the front of its face.
Yeah, and this bill looks like a mostly dark bill, but darker towards the tip and paler towards the base, based on what we can see. It's a little bit soft. It's not a perfect photo, but I think we can safely take that away.
We can see a little bit of barring at the base of the tail on the undertail coverts if we look really closely.
Kind of
but
smudgy gray.
If we flip through our field guides, we'll come to two gulls that are frequently found in places like Plum Island, Massachusetts, that look like this, and that would be the Iceland and the Glaucus gull. And so
collectively we call them our white-winged gulls, white-winged gulls or white wings, for the reasons, as you can clearly see in this photo. Most gulls are going to have some black in the wingtips, going to be a little bit darker gray, but white-winged gulls, your Iceland gull, your Glaucus gull, are going to be pretty pale all the way to the tip. Some of them show a little bit of a smudgy color, and especially the western subspecies of Iceland gull, Thayer's gull, formerly known as Thayer's gull, does tend to be a little bit. It does tend to be a little darker in the tip, but in the East Coast, Iceland and Glaucus are both there, both have bright white tips, and it makes it a little bit easier to narrow it down.
So we pretty much narrowed this down to Iceland or Glaucus gull. So let's figure out which one it is, and we're gonna compare the two species here. So here I have added a second bird to this photo, and what we can see here is that even though they're superficially quite similar, they're actually kind of different. First thing, the shape. I mean, look at the wing shape. All right, let's just jump to the chase here. The bird in question is an Iceland gull, and the bird on the left is a Glaucus gull for comparison. And you'll notice a couple of things, as Nate just said. The rather broad wings. The Glaucus gull has shorter wings, so they appear
not as pointy.
Exactly. But also look at the bill. Glaucus gull has that big bicolored bill that really stands out and is one of those things that you notice right away when you see a Glaucus.
And it just goes to the
first cycle Glaucus gull like this.
It goes to the whole impression of a Glaucus gull, which is just of an absolute bruiser of a gull. Bigger than a herring, more kind of between a herring and a great blackback gull in general size, and they certainly look it. I mean, they've typically got this big flat head and a massive bill, and just a big body. They're a real rough looking gull, whereas an Iceland gull, sort of more dove-like, smaller bill, longer, kind of slim body. More like a ring-billed gull, though they are quite a bit bigger than a ring-billed gull, but just in general proportions, in general shape and impression, that's sort of what they'll look like for you. They're kind of a peaceful, friendly looking gull, whereas a Glaucus gull looks like it would rip your heart out if given the opportunity to do so.
Yes, and as Nate mentioned, this species, Iceland gull, has several subspecies, and they vary from east to west. So in the east, on the East Coast, you'll see birds that look like this. This is a first cycle Iceland gull. But then as you go west through the Great Lakes, they'll have more and more dark pattern, especially in the wingtips and the tail.
It's called clinal variation.
Exactly. And as you continue west, they get larger and darker, to the point where it can be very difficult to tell them from herring gulls in some cases.
There's a lot of birds bird species that sort of do this, paler in the east, darker in the west. Not just gulls, but a lot of passerines are like this. Song sparrow, Savannah sparrow, things of that nature. Things tend to be pale in the east and dark in the west. That's just one of those
larger in the west.
And larger in the west. Yeah, it's just one of those laws of biogeography that we see manifest in the birds that are out there.
Okay, so
before we move on, I do have a good question about Plum Island from Tom Marson Ryan on YouTube. He asks, and this is sort of, he says he's going to Plum Island next weekend. So congratulations, great place to go birding in the winter. He asks, how do you approach birding a hotspot like that, planning your trip to a place like Plum Island? How would you, let's say you're going to bird Plum Island next weekend, Greg, what are you doing? What are the steps?
I would call somebody who lives in Massachusetts and ask them what to do, because one of the things about, so there's a boatload of online resources for somebody who's going. You're going to Plum Island for the first time. You can get on eBird, and you can see what's been seen at Plum Island in a lot of cases.
And I wouldn't just stop at Plum Island too. I would look at all of Essex County once you're up there.
Exactly.
A lot of good birding up in that area. It's not just Plum Island.
And so, a resource like eBird will show you what's been seen in the area and even in specific locations. But even a specific location, a point like an eBird pin, it doesn't tell you how to bird it once you get there.
That's true.
And that's where birder-to-birder communication comes in. So you might want to get on a Massachusetts listserv, or I think there's a Massachusetts birding group on Facebook, and just ask questions. Ask the people who live there, ask the locals. That's always the best way to get information about how to bird a place you've never been to.
Yeah, and Plum Island on its own, I think, is actually an easier place to bird if you're just birding the wildlife refuge. Because if I recall correctly, there's just one road that goes down, and it goes all the way to the end, and then you turn around, and then you come back. And there's a few like pull-offs and places you can check out the birds, overlooks of the ocean and of the marsh on the sound side, all the way down there. Hopefully, at those places you're looking for things like snowy owl and all sorts of cool stuff like that. But knowing, specifically where birds can be found at those places is really useful to know someone, or at least have a contact with somebody, because, birds are predictable. That is one of the nice things about them. And you can usually find individual birds or specific birds that you want to see at specific spots. And that, as Greg says, may not be always obvious on eBird. But if you're able to have access to a birder, then you can get that information, which is maybe more important for a place that's a little more complex than Plum Island. Plum Island's pretty easy to bird, but that's I do the same thing. I'd go to eBird and check out what's been seen recently and kind of plan my trip around that, and check the whole county area. I know that whole area up around Salisbury and Rockport and all that stuff up in Essex County. There's a lot of good birding this time of year. So don't just stay at Plum Island. Make sure that you're checking out some other spots too that are worth looking at.
Absolutely. And on Facebook, David asks, hybridize with herring. Glaucus gull hybridize. Well, gulls and ducks just hybridize willy-nilly. But having said that, Glaucus gull hybridizes with herring gull somewhat frequently and produces a hybrid that we call Nelson's gull, which is a really cool looking bird and a really confusing bird for people who aren't familiar with it. Iceland gull and herring gull, that is not I don't know that I've ever seen one. I know I've never seen one. I can't remember ever hearing of Iceland
I've seen Nelson's gulls out here before. Glaucus gull is somewhat uncommon but annual in the southeast, as far down to North Carolina, and I've seen the Nelson's gull. It looks like a weird Glaucus gull, like it's like a smudgier Glaucus gull. It still has that cool bill pattern, that really sharp bicolored pink and black bill pattern, but just generally much darker. Young herring gulls can be really, really dark and smudgy and gray. It's never that gray, but it looks like a hybrid. It looks like a right between. It looks like a tweener.
And one thing, Iceland gulls,
But that bill is cool.
again, if I remember correctly, they're cliff nesters, and herring gulls generally are not cliff nesters, and so that they don't really fraternize during that time of the year.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh yeah,
gulls.
Oh, nonsense. I love pictures like this.
We get a lot of these on
we get a lot of these.
This is a good example.
It's a good example of birding by impression, because really all you're getting here is an impression of a bird.
Yeah. So from what I can see of that bird right in the middle of that photo, this is Dayton, Ohio. This is Western Ohio, West Central Ohio. But, this is a bird that you would find just about anywhere on the continent. So there's relevance beyond just Ohio or the Midwest. Some things that are standing out to me on this bird, all over pretty gray. But what I can see are two very strong wing bars on a black wing on this bird, and a little smudge of yellow up around what I am assuming is the head end of the bird. And that enough, even that impression is enough to lead us to the correct identification, even though we can't really make anything out of the tail or the bill. Maybe you can see a little bit of bill, but you're not getting much out of it. Can't even see the eye through a bunch of twigs.
Sort of.
Yeah, but this is the bright white wing bars, the gray body with the yellowish chin, yellowish head.
That black wing panel.
Yeah, the big dark black wing panel.
Yep.
This is American Goldfinch.
Very very common plumage this time of year for American Goldfinch.
Yeah, for sure. But this is one of those things where it goes to show you don't really need all the field marks to make an identification. Even with even with a, I think we can objectively call this a very bad bird photo. I don't want to, pick on the person who made the photo, took the photo. I mean, it's probably looks like by the proportions it was taken with an iPhone. And while the iPhone photos capacity has really improved over the last decade, still not as good as a regular camera. But there's enough here to make that identification. So if you're curious about a bird, take the photo anyway and send it to our group, and we'll give it a try.
Yep. Okay, this is from Baltimore. And judging by the size of the branch it's on and the branches it's among, I think we can say this is a pretty small bird. One of the things we see right away is the kind of short conical bill and a rufous cap. And if you flip to the sparrows, which is what that is going to lead you to, that short conical bill, you'll find a number of birds that look like this. And one of the things that stands out on this bird is the black spot on the breast.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so this is a great photo for this time of year, because if you are an eBird reviewer out there, you know that the Great Backyard Bird Count is this weekend, is going on right now.
eBird reviewers, we send our love to you right now. We know what's about to happen to you,
it's a rough weekend.
We
offer our condolences.
We are with you.
Yeah, but this is a great photo to show for this time of year, because this is one of the more frequently misidentified birds on the Great Backyard Bird Count, because the Great Backyard Bird Count is one of those great outreach efforts where, a lot of people who perhaps do not use eBird, who perhaps are not regular birders, are encouraged to use eBird. And it's a great tool for reaching out to people and getting them interested in bird identification and the birds that are in their yards. But it does tend to have there's a lot of mistaken IDs. There's a lot of misidentifications, and this is definitely one of the more common ones, especially in the Southeast.
And this picture in particular, because it's got some funkiness going on that is even more confusing, and that is the black spot on the breast.
Yeah, for sure. So you look at your field guide, you see dark spot on the breast, rufous cap. This is American tree sparrow,
right?
And you'll enter it in as American tree sparrow.
So let's make that comparison. And So here we have an American tree sparrow on the right and the bird in question on the left.
Beefy boy.
Yeah.
Tree sparrow's a beefy sparrow.
So the pitfall here is that the bird on the left does not really have a dark spot on the chest like the bird on the right. What we're seeing is the dark down feathers. This bird is puffed up, and you can see the two feather tracks on the breast are separated, and maybe the wind is blowing or whatever. Exactly. It's just like a seam
that runs down the middle of a bird's breast, where the feathers kind of come over across it. You know, like a jacket, like a down jacket with a zipper in the middle, except they don't have
like this vest I'm wearing.
Yeah, so the feathers kind of wrap around the bird and come together in the middle. And when they get ruffled, when a bird puffs out its feathers, or maybe it's windy, or maybe they're wet, or whatever, you will see the down at the base of those feathers, and it's black, which makes sense. Black retains heat better than light colors, so those are going to be black. And when you see that, it gives the impression of a big dark spot right in the middle of the bill, and the breast rather.
Yep.
I'm jumping ahead.
And so so some other things we see here on the bird on the left is it's really very gray compared to the bird on the right. It's got the rufous cap, and it has a dark line through the eye. And the dark line through the eye is what's going to separate it from some other rare sparrows, like possibly clay-colored, that might show, it wouldn't show that much rufous on the head, or swamp sparrow.
I'll tell you, like in Maryland, I'd almost expect a clay-colored before an American tree sparrow in some parts of the country, in some parts of that state.
Okay.
And in the Southeast in general, that's usually the case.
So we've got a chipping sparrow here on the left, and this looks like a younger bird that's coming into adult plumage, I believe. But notice on the right the American tree sparrow. It's got that bicolored bill. Now you say, well, the bird on the left has a bicolored bill too. Yes, but it's not quite as bicolored, and it's pink instead of yellow. And the yellow lower mandible of the American tree sparrow, like the fox sparrow, it really stands out when you get a good look at the bird. But also just look at the general color and tone. The tree sparrow on the right is kind of buffy, almost pinkish overall. It's got a very different overall kind of color tone general impression than the bird on the left.
Yeah, these winter chipping sparrows give novice birders headaches all the time because, you get familiar with the summer chipping sparrow with the real dark eye line and the clean, bright chestnut cap. And then when they get into this basic plumage, this winter plumage, that cap gets kind of spotty. It gets more kind of browny rufous instead of that deep chestnut. And it does, as you can see, it looks a lot like a tree sparrow. And when you're not really expecting a winter chipping sparrow, when you're so used to those birds in your neighborhood in the summer, it can really throw you. And that's, you see that a lot on the Great Backyard Bird Count.
And one esoteric thing to point out, in a photo like this that is useful, American tree sparrow has black feet. And
I was just going to point that out. You don't always see that, but you can see it really well in this photo.
Yeah, and chipping sparrow and the others that might be confused with it have pinkish or flesh-colored feet. All righty.
Watch out for those chipping sparrows.
Morro Bay, California.
Yeah, we got to throw our Western birders a bone.
Oh, we're going west here now.
Yeah.
So I picked this one because of the description.
Quick question before we move on. Stephen Self in the on YouTube asks, what would rule out field sparrow on that bird? And he asks, is it the eye line? Yeah, it's pretty much the eye line. Field sparrow has a big white eye ring that stands out in the face really well, and an all pink bill. Like that bill is going to be all pink. They just have a really cute face that's less severe, no eye line with a big open face. They kind of, but it's another one of those Spizella sparrows that is similar in shape and habits and behavior and all that stuff. So good question.
Absolutely. So the reason I picked this one is because of the description, and the person who submitted the photo said, that they thought they knew what it was, but they usually see them in big groups. And this bird was all by itself, and that is very true with this species.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this threw me off because this is a species obviously we don't see in the East. But it's a widespread Western bird that a lot of people see out there. But yeah, that I know, they're all over gray, very featureless gray plumage. Darker on the top than the bottom for the most part, but even that is pretty uniform. And but that little tiny bill, all black bill. A little more conical than what you'd expect on like a chickadee or a titmice. They tend to be a little bit longer on that bill, but it does more or less the same thing. But that's sort of what we're thinking with this bird too. It's one of those small chickadees, titmice.
Verdon is another one, although that wouldn't really be found in Morro Bay, California.
Yeah, too far north.
But what the person has said. So this species, we'll just cut to the chase. This is a bush tit.
Messing around.
Bush tits typically travel in big groups, and they play follow the leader very frequently, where they'll be all massed up in one bush or one tree, and then one will fly across to another, and then they'll follow, kind of zip, 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 and that's another birding by impression thing. When you see a flock of bush tits, they're pretty distinctive as a flock, and you can identify them. You can identify them, by their sound and by their habits before actually getting a good look at any individual member of that flock.
Yeah. They're very different from the other kind of smaller birds that they might be associating with, like chickadees, like kinglets, things of that nature. They're kind of round-bodied, long tail, and very, 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 very social. They're known to kind of wear out suet feeders, suet piranhas. What a lot of folks
suet piranhas, exactly.
Yeah, neat little birds.
All right, we're gonna stay out west. Look at this beast.
That's a chunk. That's a chunker. It's a unit.
So I mean, I'm just going by the face and what I see. I mean, this looks like an eider to me.
Well, certainly a duck.
Certainly a duck.
Big, thick legs, webbed feet.
Yep. A duck bill.
Bill, long, blunt, rounded tip bill.
And we see a lot of birds like this in What's This Bird? Because they're all over the place.
They're all over the place. Never underestimate the ability of ducks to mix their genes freely. That park ponds, looks like we're looking at a park situation here with that close cropped grass. I can see it. I can see the edge of the pond just off to the left of this bird. This is, I wouldn't go much further on this guy than manky mallard, although who knows if it's mostly even mallard. There might be some.
I'm going to go further than that. I'm going to go further than that
for it.
Because look at how long this bird's tail is. So let's look at the parts. Let's look at the parts of this bird and the plumage. So first of all, the feet these are big,
really
big, massive feet even for a duck. This bird's got a long tail. It's got kind of a strangely shaped bill. It's not quite mallard, but now it's got kind of the color of a mallard with that rufous chest and the fine gray vermiculation on parts of the flank. But the long tail and the legs and just the general chunkiness of this bird. This is a domestic Muscovy mallard hybrid.
Yeah, I'd give you that. It's got a lot of Muscovy in it, that's for sure.
And if you look, I blew the picture up, and you could see some like warts and stuff, caruncles around the eye.
Oh, there you go.
Which is
so Muscovy duck is, they're a wild bird throughout the neotropics. A large duck with mostly the wild type birds are mostly all dark, sort of like this, with big white patches in the wing, though not on the flight feathers that are shown here.
Right.
You can find it as a wild bird and throughout Mexico and Middle America and into South America and all the way up into Texas a little bit into Texas, and they have been kind of pushing north, or at least wild type Muscovy ducks have sort of pushed for. I don't know why they called this bird Muscovy, given that that's from that the etymology of that is from Moscow, Muscovites. I don't know why these birds were given the name of Russian Russian city, but there you have it.
Yeah, and I picked this one specifically for Steve Huggins, and if you are on Facebook, you can see his face palm. This is Steve's favorite bird, and he makes a point of going out of his way to see Muscovy ducks, especially feral and hybridized ones, wherever he can.
Well, there's a feral population in Florida.
There is.
That is countable by ABA standards now. So,
Mm-hmm.
while in the past you had to go to South Texas and stand on the Rio Grande and hope that a flock of wild Muscovies flew by to get your ABA area Muscovy duck. Now you can go to Florida. You can go to a golf course in Florida and see those sort of they're feral Muscovy ducks that are all over the place in the open area, the open aviary that is Florida. And yeah, whatever. Maybe the experience is a little bit lessened, but
I was just gonna say I've seen Muscovies in the Amazon, and when you see them you see the truly wild birds out in the middle of nowhere. They're spectacular. I mean, they're big.
Yeah, it's a big duck. Yeah,
they're
cool
spectacular
looking
birds.
Yeah.
So yes, this is a.
Thank you, Greg, for this garbage duck.
Hey, that's we are nothing if not manky here.
Yeah, that's right. That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
All right, I'm gonna. I think we're gonna stay out west.
Before we tackle these birds, I just want to remind folks that if you have any questions or comments or any of that stuff about birds or birding, please leave them in the comments wherever you're watching this, and we'll be grabbing them, and we'll be happy to answer those questions as we go. Roxanne Featherly says yes, she's seen the flybys in Texas. I haven't, though. I have stood on the Rio Grande many times.
Yes.
Looking for the flybys in Texas, and have not, but I did end up getting my quote unquote life ABA area Muscovy at a golf course in Orlando. So yeah, take what you can get, right? At least it wasn't like a milestone bird.
Exactly. Okay, so we are back in California.
How embarrassing.
And this is I wouldn't have brought that out in public, but whatever. You're young, you'll live through it.
That's right.
This is a bird that is showing up now all over the place.
Yeah, a lot of these wandering around.
And we see this bird a lot in What's This Bird? And take it away there, Nate.
Oh, people put them in What's This Bird because they're so I don't know, like every time that I have taken a group of novice bird watchers out on a bird walk and we get a good look at this species, their socks are like completely knocked off because this is one of the classiest looking birds in North America, and we are so fortunate that it is as common as it is. Things to look for on this bird: look at that bright yellow tail tip, that just sort of stands out. Beautiful.
Well, and I'll stop you right there because there's only 2 species in North America that have that bright yellow tail band. Really, if all we had was a picture of the tail
right there, we could identify this bird.
We could probably identify it to species. Or get pretty
but
close.
But other things to look for, I mean, look at that cool head, that little dinky bill, and the real cool looking mask, and the foppish crest. Man, this is a great bird. Foppish. Dandy. It's got a dandy crest.
Dandy crest. It does.
Yeah. It's just such a neat looking bird.
It is.
Yeah. And you can see the namesake wing features on that bird right at the top middle.
Exactly. The little red dots in the wing panel. So if you flip them through your guide and you're looking at birds to try to figure out what this is, you'll come across a page or two that has 2 different species of these wax wings, which, as Nate said, is
wax on the wings
by the little waxy tips on the ends of the wing covert feathers there, and this is the more common species, at least in most of our area. This is the Cedar Wax Wing. The other species is the Bohemian Wax Wing, which is larger. It's grayer overall. It doesn't have that kind of I don't know, almost luxurious brown tan color.
It's like really like fancy leather in a luxury car.
Yeah, it's the Bohemian Wax Wing is grayer and a little almost pinkish around the face, and the face pattern on the Bohemian, actually, if you had to put them head to head, I'd say, boy, the Bohemian's got even a more interesting face pattern. And then the Bohemian Wax Wing has a very busy wing pattern. It has white fringes on all the flight feathers, and in addition to the red waxy tips, and it just gives a completely different impression when you see.
Yeah, and if you can see the undertail, it's got like a reddish undertail as well that makes it rather different. Occasionally, you will see Bohemian waxwings flying around in flocks of cedar waxwings. In places that are far south from what you'd expect. There was a photo taken recently last month in Virginia, in Roanoke, Virginia, which is not far from where I am, of a Bohemian waxwing amongst a large flock of cedar waxwings after the last snowstorm that kind of blew through the southeast. So they can be found. There are records from Texas. There are records from like Arkansas. They can come down. Like one will get in with a flock of cedar waxwings and just kind of follow it around because that's the closest thing you can find. But it's primarily a bird that's found in the boreal forest. They will come down into the Great Lakes region and New England sometimes, infrequently. But it's always very exciting when you get to see them. That's a bird I still have not seen, is Bohemian waxwing.
A group of my buddies from Chicago here were up in Duluth, up in Minnesota last weekend birding.
Place where you can get
and Duluth has a massive number of Bohemian waxwings right now. I think they had one flock of 700 or 800, another flock of 1,200 birds, and they come right into town and feed on the rowan berries. Mountain ash.
Yeah, they love those rowan berries, mountain ash. Yeah, very cool stuff. Yep, I'm glad you showed this bird, Greg. People are always excited to see him.
And
moving on.
We're gonna stay in California here. This is the West Coast version today. This particular thing. This is one of the This bird is one of the most commonly posted in the group. And it's one of the most confusing birds in North America. What we've got here is, well, what do we see here? It's kind of got pointy wings. It's kind of long,
banded
tubular
tail,
and banded tail, little
short
bill. Looks like there's a hook on the. So we've got a hawk here. And so let's just cut to the chase. We're looking at one of two species, but when we see it like this, it gets confused with another really unrelated species.
This is a difficult, this is a weird angle. And there is no truth to the rumor that we are changing the name of What's This Bird to What's This Accipiter.
Right.
That would probably be would probably be justified to do so. I'm curious what your third bird is, Greg.
Okay. So what's this accipiter? This is either a Cooper's or a sharp-shinned hawk.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say, based on what I see here, it looks to me like a Cooper's hawk.
I agree.
And the reason for that is the very rounded tail feathers. It looks like they're somewhat graduated from what I can see. But look at the flaring white undertail coverts. Floofy pants that are sticking out on this bird. And this is something you'll see in the spring. In the spring, you will see it a lot. This is a Cooper's hawk doing its courtship display. And what these birds do, and I wished I have some video of it, and I couldn't find it in time to post it here today. But what Cooper's hawks do is they flare out those big floofy pants, and they fly with very slow moth-like,
sort of like a yellow-breasted chat almost, with a similar sort of weird flight display.
Yeah, and they do this like weird gliding and tilting and slow wing beats, which is totally the opposite of what you think of when you think accipiter. You think a very fast bird,
choppy wing beats. Yeah,
choppy wing beats, and when people see that, they mistake it for northern harrier, because northern harrier has that slow wing beat, and it kind of tilts and
lazy,
and it's got a bright white rump, and people, they see the floofy white pants and they think what they're seeing is the white rump, and you're not. This is underneath the bird. It's not on top.
Yeah.
And
Walter Catindo
yes,
suggests that the bird should be Floofer's hawk, which I'm here for. I'll tell you.
We'll start the movement right now.
Yeah, right.
Consider that started.
They're just Floofer hawk. We'll get rid of the apostrophe.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is and this is a male, right? And you can tell because it features is just sort of smaller than what I expect to see in a lot of Cooper's hawks. It's more of a sharp-shinned hawk. It's the big female Sharpies and the small female Coopers that tend to be the most difficult birds in that species pair to identify. And this definitely has kind of a smaller bodied feel than I generally see with Cooper's hawks that are perched. And part of that may be the way it's flying, and part of that may be the fact that it is a male bird as opposed to a female bird. But yeah, I don't think Sharpies don't do that floofy thing, do they? They don't have the pants. It's just a Cooper's hawk thing.
They do, but it's not like this.
Yeah.
And if you're really lucky, you'll see a pair, and they'll both get up and do this, and the male and female, and they'll fly in circles around each other, calling, and it's really wonderful to see. I've seen it a few times, and just really, if you hear that loud cacking call of the Cooper's hawk coming from up in the sky, stop what you're doing and try to find that bird, because it's probably doing that display, that courtship display.
Yeah. A lot of species, a lot of pair bonding going on in raptors just generally this time of year. They tend to breed very early in the year, sometimes even before the last snow is gone. I mean, I've seen bald eagles where they're like on a nest covered in snow. But the red-shouldered hawks in my neighborhood are doing the pair bonding thing and are very loud. And there's a lot of that going on with raptors right now, and it's a good time to go out and look for raptors because of that. And also owls are calling pretty regularly in the woods these days because they breed very early as well. Roxanne Featherly says it needs a white puffy shirt to match. Greg, next time. This is a good one, because this is not the only photo of a Cooper's hawk flying around with the big floofy undertail coverts that we have seen in What's This Bird this week. I swear there's been like 5 or 6 of them. People are running into that behavior a lot these days.
And our last photo for the afternoon is also no, this is from New Jersey.
It could be from California.
It could be. And here, I mean, this is a hawk. I mean, you just look at that. You see the
short curved bill.
Short curved bill and the glaring eyes and the long wings, and I mean, this is a hawk or an eagle of some kind,
soaring.
And the first thing we see is just how much white there is underneath the bird. And this bird seems to have pretty long wings and a long tail. And look at how gray it is. We don't have. I mean, there's only 2 or 3 hawks we have in the ABA area that are gray, and in New Jersey, there's really one that has this much white underneath with the black wing tips and gray chest, and that is the bird that is most commonly mistaken for what we were just talking about earlier, and that is a northern harrier. Typically, it's the female or young northern harrier that is confused with Cooper's hawk when they do their floofy pants thing. But here you can even see the white rump on this bird.
A little bit, yeah.
And you can kind of see the dish face. This harriers are kind of unique. They have
small head,
almost owl-like face that's kind of dish shaped.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they use their I wonder if they use
Whether
their ears at all hunting. Sorry.
Yeah, I think they do actually. I think that they do it a little bit because they hunt in the same sort of places that that owls do, especially short-eared owls and things like that. Broad open country. They're looking for small rodents, small birds too. I've seen them take birds over those fields and stuff like that. They're actually really pretty good at that, and they I was watching one a few years ago in the eastern part of North Carolina, and it was just kind of cruising around doing that lazy flight that northern harriers do, where they're kind of teeter-tottering around, barely flapping. And it goes over a bush where a big flock of yellow-rumped warblers had just taken refuge, and it came along and it just did this really quick turn, like it kind of whipped around and stuck its super long. They've got those kind of go-go gadget long legs. It just snatched one right out of the bush. It was a really cool thing.
Yeah, they are. They're really something to watch, and they have that kind of low coursing, lazy flight with slow wing beats, and they're just really neat. And if you live in a place where you get short-eared owls in the winter, and we're lucky to have some big prairies around here where we get both species. You can see them both, and if you're lucky, you'll get them interacting as
they do
the day shift and as the day shift and the night shift start to switch over.
That is a wild thing to go to a place where you can see a ton of northern harriers, and then as the sun gets lower and lower and lower, like a short-eared owl will pop up, and they're a little bit smaller than a harrier. They've got shorter wings, though they still they flap a little bit more when they hunt. But you can see them, and they do similar sort of things, but for whatever reason they do not like each other at all. Like harriers will always go after short-eared owls,
and it's almost like it's not always the harrier knocking the short-eared away. It's the short-ears will put up a fight,
go after it. That is really neat. So northern harrier there, good bird to see this time of year. They should be moving quite a bit lately. They'll head back up to the boreal. A few of them breed down here, though. It's
they nest in the prairie potholes,
in the coastal marshes. Down here as well.
And they nest in the prairie potholes, in the Dakotas and Minnesota and southern Canada. So that is it for our photos today.
Which is great because we've got some questions here.
We do.
A few of them. I've got 3, 2 on Facebook, 1 on YouTube, and the YouTube one came in first, so let's do that one.
All right.
Excuse me. It's from Timothy Condon. Heading to Alaska at the end of June for a family vacation. Any bird field guide recommendations? I don't know of any Alaska specific guides out there.
No, I would take the Sibley guide. That is my go-to field guide. It'll cover everything that you would find in Alaska for the most part.
Yeah, if you're feeling really ambitious, you can get the Mark Brazel Guide to Birds of East Asia. Because you never know.
You never know. Depending on where you go in Alaska.
That's true. It's a great time of year to be up in Alaska. Almost 24 hours of daylight up there. It's gonna be nice in late June. Another question from Leela Wickham Gunn on Facebook. Says, I'm visiting North Myrtle Beach this week. I don't walk well. Any ideas for wildlife drives in or near the area? I would suggest. That's your
territory.
It is. I would suggest going down to Huntington Beach State Park, a little bit south of Myrtle Beach. Really nice state park with a lot of great wildlife habitat, and you can kind of drive on the causeway there that goes down there, and there's usually a ton of wading birds and alligators and cool stuff like that that you can see without getting out of the car very much at all. Really nice to see that. And there's a couple parking lots you can go and look out over the ocean, which is always worthwhile when you're near it. See things like, I don't know, there should be a lot of seabirds still flying around now, northern gannets this time of year, dolphins. There'll be dolphins in the near shore waters. It's good. Let's see, right about now is when the leatherback sea turtles ought to be making a show on the coast of the Carolinas. So if you're looking for a big dark lump out on the water, because the cannonball jellies come in and the leatherbacks like to eat those. But that's what I would suggest, the Huntington Beach area, a little bit south of Myrtle Beach, but it's real nice. One of my favorite places in the Carolinas, and that's saying something because it's South Carolina and not North Carolina.
Yeah, so Ronan Okara asks, do any of the European harriers show up on this side? Effectively, no.
I mean, they could.
I'm not. Yeah, they could. I cannot remember off the top of my head. If you go to aba.org/checklist, you can check the ABA checklist to see if any have ever been recorded in the ABA area.
I think there are a couple reports of Western Marsh Harrier in the east, but that is almost identical to our Northern Harrier, and in fact was considered conspecific for a very long time. It's a really tough ID, and so I don't think they've ever really gotten beyond just reports. But I think people have reported them, and it's certainly possible.
Yeah, and so Chris Ortega asks about the video from Mexico of the yellow-headed blackbirds, and I was waiting for somebody to bring that up. Yes, we have seen it, and we have discussed it. I think, Nate, you agree that it looks to us like it was a flock of birds that were either sitting on wires overhead or flying overhead, and were startled by a predator, probably a peregrine falcon, and they just dove into the buildings and the ground.
To a big flock of birds that just panicked, essentially. And, it's the sort of behavior that would probably not cause too many bird fatalities if it were over the ground or a field or something soft. But they flew straight into the road and the sidewalk and buildings, and that's what ended up killing those birds. But I agree with you, Greg. That's what it looks like to me. I've seen birds, big flocks of blackbirds, react that way to things like harriers, to things like peregrine falcon, merlin, any sort of predatory bird that they just get a look at. And most of the time they're kind of flying into empty space, into air, and it's causing those kind of the densest part of the flocks the birds to kind of rearrange themselves so they don't run into each other, which they do frequently. People don't necessarily realize that, but they run into each other a lot, but they don't always run into like hard surfaces. But this time they did. And I do think that's what happened. The suggestions that this was something like toxic gas or some sort of pollutant or something just doesn't sit right to me. The way the video that I have seen of the birds, it looks like they're escaping a predator.
It does. They're like almost originating from one point and going out in an even spread to get away from something that's overhead. And most of the birds swoop up and continue on and move and fly on, and it's only a certain number that are kind of lost in the melee that run into things. For sure. So real quick here before we go, Jill White-Smith asks, are we going to mention the bat hawk that was just found? So we certainly can. It was the bat. Yes, it is a bat falcon that has been seen for 2 months in South Texas?
Yes, first seen at the end of December. Yeah.
Yes.
So 6 weeks now, 7 weeks, coming up on 2 months. Yeah.
Many hundreds of birders have been delighted to go see that bird. It is a spectacular little guy.
What a neat bird. Really neat. Definitely the first. I don't think it will be the last. Bat falcon, the range has been sort of expanding northward into Mexico as close as Nuevo Leon, which is where Monterey is. They're somewhat regular there in recent years. So I think that we will probably see bat falcon show up in Texas again, or New Mexico, or even Arizona. I think it's going to be one of those birds we're going to see more of in the next decade or so.
Absolutely.
I do have a question from YouTube. Alex Colucci asks, he'll be in NC's Outer Banks in late April, early May. Never done a pelagic birding before. All the pelagics out of Hatteras worth a try. I'm a North Carolina pelagic partisan, so I would say yes. I would check and see if they're going out in that time of year. Usually they do what's called the Blitz in late May around Memorial Day weekend, where they go out every single day for like 2 weeks, and that's kind of the time. That's the best time for North Carolina pelagics, not necessarily because of rarities, though they have their fair share of rarities, but it's just the highest concentration of offshore birds, because the birds that breed in the Arctic are still hanging around, and the birds that winter in the North Atlantic are still, starting to arrive. The, Southern Hemisphere birds that are wintering in our summer, so they're starting to arrive. So you get things like a lot of Wilson storm petrels, great shearwater, things like that, sooty shearwater. So it's the highest concentration of pelagic, ocean-going birds is in the spring. I do think they've started doing some trips in late April and May. You have to go to seabirding.com, which is Brian Pattison's website. He's not paying us to say that, but he is
Nope.
pretty much the only show in town at a Hatteras.
He's
the
dude.
It helps that it's a good show.
And I believe today is the anniversary of the black-browed albatross.
Yeah, black-browed albatross has been seen a few times off North Carolina. There was actually a yellow-nosed albatross seen a couple days ago from shore, from Cape Point. Mid-February is like albatross season. It's weird. Almost all the records of albatrosses in North Carolina have come in this little window. Maybe it's the same bird circling back every single year. That's pretty cool. I would definitely suggest to go out, maybe do 2 if you can, because you'll see stuff on one day that you might not see another. It's kind of a crapshoot to some extent, but always fun to get out there, not just for the birds. There's a lot of cool critters out in the open ocean that you wouldn't see, sharks and turtles and cetaceans and whatnot.
Yeah. One last quick one before we go, because we have ticked over to the 1 o'clock hour here.
Oh my goodness.
Susan Benson asked, can a snowy owl take a harrier? Snowy owl is a massive bird that can take almost anything it gets its talons on. They are just huge. And
Harrier is large wingspan, long wings, but that bird is actually quite small. If you look at its mass, it's all feathers and bones. There's not much to it. And a snowy owl is like a semi-truck of a bird. I would definitely put my money on the snowy owl on that one if it can catch it.
If it can catch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us. And if you enjoy what we do here, you enjoy hanging out with us on your lunch break, and you want to keep us here, right up there, aba.org/join. Join the ABA and help keep the lights on and keep these things going. Help fund everything we do, from a website to the podcast to Birding Magazine. You will get Birding Magazine if you're a member. We would certainly love to have you come join the club.
Yeah, and if you enjoy weekly talks about birds, please check out the American Birding Podcast wherever you can find podcasts. I host it, and Greg is on it from time to time as well.
The best natural history podcast out there. I'm biased, but it is.
I appreciate that. But let's find it wherever you can find podcasts. We're pretty easy to find. You don't even have to know the name. Just type in birding and you can find it. There's some other good birding podcasts out there if you want to expand just beyond us. aba.org/join. Support the ABA by joining. Check out our other free resources. And Greg, we'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll do this again. If you want to let us know, you can get on our mailing list. I'm not exactly. Maybe we'll throw the link somewhere where you can get on that. You can get.
If you get on our website, there's a sign up form in most of the pages in the right hand column. You'll see it there. And
we'll let you know before we do these things, and or you can subscribe on YouTube and get us that way. Yep. Otherwise, all right. See you guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.